Hello again, I'm Larry Hamilton and welcome to my painting channel. Thank you for joining. Today we're going to do an oil painting and it's going to be painted on 11 by 14 canvas that is toned with gray gesso. It's a painting of a small cabin with a fountain and some flowers. It's springtime here where I am, and so flowers are starting to bloom, and I thought this would make a nice painting to let us try our handiwork on flowers. It's a small cabin with a fountain, as I said, and we'll put some nice flowers around it. I have a sketch up here that I'll show you in a second. So let's zoom in here and see if you can see the sketch, and hopefully it's not too light. I'll zoom way in so you can see that I do have a small cabin there and a little fountain on the right. So it's got a few palm trees around the outside, and then there's flowers around the fountain, and some flowers in some flower pots even in the foreground here. So it's going to give us a little challenge for us today, but I think overall we'll have a good chance to try some new techniques. I'm going to get my main camera adjusted just right for you. Please bear with me while I do this. Okay, there, it was sliding around on me a little bit. Okay, I think that should be pretty good. All right, I think we are about ready to go. I want to explain the brushes we're using today. The standard brushes that we use on all of these oil paintings. I may add one brush just to see if I can get some hard edges a little better. Most of the students in my class will not have this brush, so I may bring some to class so that they can use to just try it. But one thing about oil paintings is it's a little hard to get really sharp edges like you see on the edge of the building, even sharp edges around the fountain using the standard Bob Ross brushes. He does not have a flat or a synthetic brush that lets you get some very sharp edges. So I have a small 1/2-inch synthetic brush that we will use that doesn't show on the list of brushes that I have in my overlay. When I make the video, I show you the brushes we're using, but this is a 1/2-inch flat. It's a synthetic brush, Taklon it's called. So I may use that around these edges to try to get some sharpness. The rest of the brushes you would see on this overlay, it's the 1-inch landscape brush. We have the fan brush, number 3 fan brush, and we have the number 2 script liner. And then the brushes I've added, I have a bright, which is sort of rectangular, but it's made of bristle, and it doesn't have quite the sharpness that you can get out of the synthetic brushes. And then I have my trusty old number 10 filbert that we use a lot. And of course I still have the painting knife that we will use, the number 5 painting knife. So with that said, let me go around the palette here and give you the paints. They are going to also be shown in an overlay, but I will do it here as well. The paints, I've added 2 paints. It's the standard Bob Ross palette, but I've added 2 paints for this particular painting. One of them I've added on previous paintings, this ultramarine violet, which you see right here. Then I start with the regular Ross palette. It's liquid white, not liquid white, titanium white, phthalo blue, Prussian blue, midnight black, Van Dyke brown, dark sienna, alizarin crimson, sap green, cadmium yellow, yellow ochre, Indian yellow, bright red, and then the other one I've added, which happens to be running down my palette, as you can see here. My palette's mounted vertically. This is the soft oil colors from Bob Ross. This is called magenta. So it'll be good for some of the flowers that we're going to have in this painting. I may have to use my palette knife and mash that down to keep it from sliding too much. It's going to slide right off my palette onto the floor, which would not be a happy thought. Let's see if I can do something to slow its movement down there. Okay, maybe that'll help. I am getting a little running off my sap green up here, but that's usually not too bad. Some of these paints have more oil in them than others, and the Bob Ross soft oil colors definitely have more oil in them, as you can see here. The ultramarine violet over here is a Grumbacher paint, and it's fairly dry compared to the soft oil colors from Bob Ross. So with that in mind, I think we'll try to get started. I mentioned this pallet. It's a glass pallet. It's about 11 by 14, just about the same size as the canvas. And I have it mounted vertically on a Bob Ross pallet, and I also have gray gesso behind it. So we have a gray tone, a mid-tone gray behind the pallet, and we have a mid-tone gray on the canvas. So it helps me in judging values, whether I want a value lighter than mid-tone or a value darker than mid-tone. I use that as a guide to help me get the right value sometimes. So the other thing I should tell you is we're probably not going to use a lot of liquid white. We will use liquid white, of course, but I only put it in places sparingly because of the fact that I don't want to cover up my sketch. So I will put it on places where we're going to have the sky in the background and maybe some of these soft trees in the background. I'll have it there, and then I'll leave the rest for later. So right now I'm just going to put a little liquid white here at the top where I'm going to have sky. And that right there is about all the sky we're going to have in this painting. But I know I'm going to have some trees, and they're going to be some of them in the far background, so I'm going to go ahead and put some liquid white over this side over here. I just have to remember my trees only come part way down across the canvas here. But I don't want to cover up my sketch of my fountain and the top of my fountain yet. So I'm going to just do it down to here like that. And that still leaves the outline of the roof of my building. So with that going, let's start with some of the colors. I'm going to use a little bit of phthalo blue for the sky. I use that fairly often to make a nice bright blue sky. This is a warm climate like maybe California or maybe South America, maybe Mexico, where you might see a little stucco type cabin that has a fountain in it, and so it's a bright day. And so I'm going to put in some phthalo blue here and see if I can get a nice sky. The liquid white, as you can see, pulls a lot of that paint out, that pulls a lot of that dark color out, which is good. You can really get a nice soft sky, primarily because that liquid white is under there. But I don't want it to be so light that you can't tell that it's a sky. Over here, there's going to be sky behind some of these trees, so I'll just sort of move in a little bit over here, knowing the trees go there. That'll be all I need there. And to show distance, I'm going to always add just a little bit of alizarin crimson. A touch of this on the brush goes a long way. As I've told you before, it doesn't take much to overpower any color. So I'm just put a little change of color there so that it's not all one tone of blue. And even put a little bit over here maybe. So that is the sky. And it's even the background for some of these soft trees on the right. So speaking of these soft trees on the right, they have some greens in them and some grays, and whoops, I'm sorry, I don't have my, this camera has to be reset. I wonder what happened here. I don't know how long ago I lost my palette camera. May have to edit some of this out or re-edit it. So in case I did lose my palette camera, I will repeat slightly that looks like I'm losing this other camera as well. What is going on here? Okay. Okay, both of my remote cameras are working. So they sort of beep at me when they don't work, so I have to stop. I'm the I'm the cameraman, I'm the lighting guy, I'm the video editor, I'm the painter, and so I have to do it all here, so I'm a one-man show, but hopefully you like these videos enough to keep watching and to kind of disregard some of my what should be outtakes. I may take them out depending on how bad they look when I get ready to edit it, but I'm putting a little alizarin crimson up here in the sky along with this phthalo blue, and that will let me, got some brush hairs in there I want to get out. Good way to get brush hairs out if you get them in your painting is just take the brush itself and push up on them, you'll pull them right off. And then wipe them out of your brush with your paper towel. I always have a paper towel in my left hand almost all the time because I want to make sure I don't have too much paint in the brush, and I want to make sure I don't have too much thinner in the brush. So that's why I do it. Okay, the trees in the background over here have some green in them, and it's sort of I still haven't washed my brush out. I'm just going to keep the blue in there because the blue and yellow will make green, as well as using sap green and a little bit of cad yellow. So on the left side of these trees in the distance, there are just some very light, bright green trees, sort of deciduous type trees, it looks like to me. So I'll pop some of these in. Along the tops of them, these trees are getting up more of the sunlight, so you see the bright green in them. I hope that's showing up well on the camera. Sometimes I have to make the painting just a little darker here in reality, so it shows up well on the video. So that's that. I'm going to add just a touch to gray that down a little bit. I'm going to add a little bit of my brown in here, like dark sienna, and go back and get some of these colors, and it will gray it down slightly, brown it down, I guess I should say, to show some shadow, and to darken it even a little more. I'm going to pick up a little of this midnight black, put a little white in there, see if that makes it, maybe even a little of this ultraviolet, that gives it a nice gray color mixed with this midnight black. So we'll have some other colors here, and I'm just kind of pushing in, pushing up, not trying to paint specific trees at all, because I don't want you to look back there all that much. This is just filling in because it's in the background. And as they set in shadow, they take on a little bit more of a gray color, maybe a purple color. They still have that bright green on top of them. So we're going to have a few palm trees that kind of stick up on top of this, so I'm just going to leave it like this and leave it soft and very bright on the tops, where you can see some of these trees in the distance. Okay, I think that's, maybe I could be just a little darker at the bottom, like in here. Yeah, there we go. If I can get three values, a light value, a medium value, and a dark value, it helps define three-dimensionality in these trees. Even though they're far off in the distance and they're not all that interesting, but I hope they're soft enough and interesting enough that the viewer can tell what they are. We want the viewer to use his imagination here and see what we have in the background. Okay, now I think maybe it's time to clean off my brush. See if I like the looks of this. We could put in just maybe a scrape or two of trunks back here to see what they look like. Kind of connect some things. I'm actually seeing that gray under the canvas come through. And then I'll cover up parts of it so that it doesn't look like I just stuck that on top. And that's all we need to do there for the sky and the background. Maybe a little brighter yellow here in the front up here. Taking some cad yellow now on the brush and just sort of touching in some brighter color. Okay, hopefully that's showing up well on the camera. And notice I don't have a circle and I don't have a rectangle here. I have something that is called an abstract shape. If you do an outline around this, you'd have a very interesting shape, which gives the viewer something to look at and makes it interesting. The more abstract shapes you have in the painting, the more interesting it is to the viewer. A lot of times you can tell a beginning artist from one who's had some training by the number of abstract shapes they leave in their painting. Even the roof of this house, even though in reality it might be perfectly square and level, I'm going to try not to paint it that way just because I want it to have an interesting shape. So a nice abstract shape, I should say, on the top line. So I'm cleaning out my brush now, this big landscape brush, and I'm going to pick up, since we're going to be painting now wet on dry canvas, I'm going to pick up my filbert and I'm going to pick up mix up a color here that's sort of a orange. I'm going to take my bright red and my yellow ochre, and I may throw a little Indian yellow in there, maybe even a cad yellow to get a good orange color. I'm trying to get a sort of a rusty orange color for this roof. It has rusty orange color and it has a little bit of brown in it, and down toward the foreground, toward the front edge of this, it's even very dark. So I'm going to load up this filbert brush now and let you see what we can do with this roof line up here. Like right here is the roof line. It does go all the way out to there. And these roofs sometimes have a tile type roof, so they would have some unevenness at the top. And start turning brown. I'm going to pull a little bit of my dark sienna in here with a little bit of white. So you see the range of colors here on the palette. I've gone from a bright red to an orange to a rusty color to a brown color to a lighter brown color, and I'm going to try to mix those colors as we go down this roof line here and get an interesting shape. I'm going to go back and change the color, get some other colors in here so it's not all identical. This roof actually has even some mossiness to the left, but there's also tree branches that kind of hang over it. So some of this back here is not even going to be all that viewable because I'm going to cover it up with some tree branches. And if you leave any brush strokes in there, you want them to go the way the roof line goes. You want them to go from the top right to the bottom left. Otherwise, it looks like it might be grass or something level, horizontal up there, and the actual strokes would go this way. So you can see I'm leaving some roughness up here. I've got little bumps in it so that it kind of sticks up, and it's not a straight line. You put a straight edge on there and it would not be a straight line, which is the way I want it. I'm going to put some shadows. There'll be some shadows up here from the trees that are overhanging. Along here, this is going to get darker. I'm going to pull in some of my violet to darken it down. And so the front of this is going to start getting darker here. It's what we're doing is making a graded color scheme here, or variegated colors, where we have darker colors in the front that sort of look like might be moldy or something like that from the heat. Again, I don't want to have a rectangle there. I don't want to have a parallelogram. I want to have something that's got some interesting shape to it. If I can arrange it, if I can make it look that way, that's what I want to try to do. So I put some lights in there, some darks. And like I said, I'm going to cover that up with some other paint anyway. All right, let's try the front edge of this. I'm going to pick up some ochre, and on the front edge here we have a little bit lighter front edge, even though the sun is coming from our right, I should tell you. So the front of this cabin is going to have some bright sun on it, and it's going to make a nice shadow on the front of this building as well. And as you get over here, it darkens off a little bit. It's not nearly as much in shadow, but you can see the edge of the building there. I'll darken this up just a little. And as we come down the building on this side, it's going to get even more darkness over here, dark browns. Come up as a shadow underneath on this side. And to darken it the right amount, I'll just throw in some more of this lavender, or violet. I keep calling it lavender. Violet. And we have a building here that's got trees, or not trees, but sort of a climbing vine hanging over it here and kind of growing up the side. So I will try to make that look right if I can. Leave some spots in there. This is the edge of the building, so I want to make sure this edge is darker, and it doesn't look darker yet, but it will. This edge will be darker because the edge of any solid object that leaves the sun is darker. So if the sun is shining on the front of the building this way, this edge immediately as it turns the corner has to be dark. It's called a plane change accent in terms of values and in terms of light, painting with light. You want to make sure that because the plane, what's called the plane, which is the surface of the side of the building, goes this way, and the surface of the front goes this way. That's a plane. This is a plane going back this way. Not an airplane, but a plane in geometric or mechanical drawing terms is where that term comes from. And it's used in art to define really where the edge of a building is. And by making it a nice dark edge there, you can tell the viewer that something's going on here. And you can see I'm having a little trouble getting a real sharp edge with this filbert brush. That's why I mentioned I might come back and use this other synthetic brush to try to get these edges a little sharper, because in building scenes the edges are sharper. And so this building actually goes down to about there. I guess that's about where it goes to. Then we have a lot of bushes on this side, big hedge like here. So I think I'll leave that the way it is for now. Maybe I'll put a little more dark right under here. Picked up a little bit of my midnight black and pull it down. There we go. And I might even do a little bit of that on this edge here to make sure we keep it standing out. Now, the front of the building is going to get lighter and maybe pinker. Oh, I see my magentas starting down the front of the, falling down off of my off of my palette. It's starting to slide. I gotta move it back up here. Excuse me while I fix my palette. I don't use these colors that much, and so now they have this runniness when I put them on a vertical palette. If you ever watch Bob Ross when he paints, he uses that great big acetate palette and has it in his hand so he can keep it tipped straight up or straight flat or however he wants to do it so that it doesn't have paint running on him. But when I'm painting, just because I want to show you the palette while I'm painting, I don't want to show it to you afterwards, and I don't want to have to take the video editor and switch back and forth. I mount it vertically like this on glass and try to get the right kind of paints and At least I can allow you to see what's going on here. Continue on the face of this building here. I'm going to come down right here by this dark area and put in some more of this building that has sort of a yellowish type stucco associated with it. Paint around where these bushes are going to be sliding in, and some of the flowery things here. There's actually a really nice shadow up here that I'm painting under right now. There's going to be a shadow on this building. A little more red in there. I'm trying to get colors that I've seen on the painting, and I'm not using the same palette as someone else did, so I have to mix my colors from the colors we have. So they won't be exactly identical, but they will be close enough. When you don't compare them to the original photograph, you'll know that they are close. That's the idea. Okay, put this in. Let's run it down. We go down to here. Keep using the same color palette here with ochres and yellows and bright reds. Painting around the door here. There's a door sitting right here that will have some sharpness to it. So let's just keep on plugging over here. We'll throw in this paint. And maybe we'll change up here. There's another dark shadow that runs on this side, under this eave on the right side. And we have a eave on the right side that's also fairly bright. Runs down this way. And I need to make it yellower, as it is in the sun. And it runs all the way down to here, about like that. And I've got some little humps in there. I'll put some other marks to make it look like it's got some nicks in it. I need more white in there. Let's see here. Yeah, that'll do for now. I can always come back and touch this up. And we'll run down some more of this color here. There's a window over here, and it has some vines growing around it. So I'm changing the color a little bit, adding some orange color in here in some places. There's another sharp edge on the edge of this building. I'll see how sharp I can get it with a filbert. If I don't have to go back and touch it up, it'll be easier for my students in the class to paint without having to buy a new knife, or to use a different knife, or a different brush rather. Not a knife. We could do that with a knife, by the way. I could bring in my palette knife, which is one way to get a good sharp edge. But people have trouble using that palette knife sometimes, so I tend to stay away from it. But I'll show you what I mean. I will take a little bit of this color here, and I'm going to scrape up a nice... I already have a pretty sharp edge there, but I can just kind of come under here and go like this, and with this knife you can see hopefully how sharp that edge became. And on the roof line up there, that edge, I can do the same thing. I'll get some more white in it and sort of just touch along here and get some interesting marks that make it look like it's a rough eave sticking out there. Do the same over here. As long as I follow the angle of that roof and use the knife, I'll have a fairly sharp edge. I'm going to leave room over here. I want to put a little bit of this right here by this door. Pull it back. The problem I got is I still have to paint the door, and it needs a sharp edge as well. Otherwise I'm going to sort of blow this. But the other thing that really makes it nice with this knife is you can come over here and now come in down and put some real texture on this building. You can just slide the knife, slide it over the top, and let the canvas pull off just a little bit of this color. and you end up some nice highlights. You can make it darker, you can make it lighter. I'm going to make mine slightly a little lighter, I think, and you can come down like this. As long as you make the marks go the way the surface of that building goes, you will have a very interesting textures on there. Like that. Okay. From the bottom we have some dark colors that I'll try to do this way. Pull up. This is sort of like moldiness and something from the bottom of this building. It gets some other dark colors in there from most stucco places have some sort of moldiness floating around. Okay, that's a little better. Hopefully that shows up well on the camera. It's looking like it does to me. Okay, we've been going about half an hour here, not quite. So if it looks too distinct, you want to come back and sort of blend it in so that it's not really sharp stuff, but you can just use the little dark streaks in there to help it add some color, and you can see that it's sort of blended. Okay, we've added some nice texture into this window. There's a lot of bushes, so I'm not going to paint a lot under that window. All right, so we got the sun shining in here. We got the darker side over here. Okay. Can come back and put in some of this shadow under the eave. I'm going to clean out this filbert. Sometimes I get painting and I don't pay enough attention to the colors in my brush, and don't stop and clean it out, so I end up with some dirty colors that I really don't want. I'm going to take a little black, a little bit of ultraviolet here. See if I can get a gray color, put a little white in there and see what it looks like. Okay. A little darker than that, but I want to get a gray color that I'm going to use for the shadow underneath this eave. And it even has just a bit of a green tint to make it look a little moldy maybe, or just echoing some of the green color in this painting. So under here we have these big old shadow that comes down underneath this eave. And if we make the brush strokes go this way, helps us get the idea of a bright sun shining on the front of this building, which is what we're really trying for here. A little bit smaller shadow on this side, but it's pretty lengthy over here. So by just putting that shadow in, sometimes you make the building pop and it starts looking like, oh, that is an eave that sticks out there, and it's kind of casting a shadow over this surface. Okay. And we'll leave a sort of a variegated or a abstract shape under this, but keep those lines coming down if you can, vertical. Don't get them off sideways. Even though I brush sideways a little bit, I try to straighten them down, straighten them out, because I don't want them to look horizontal, not on this surface plane of this building. Okay. There, so now we have a nice shadow. It's not even, it's sort of an abstract shape. It has a melodic line, you might call it, when you try to draw a line under it. And we have some texture on this, the eave sticking up. Okay. That color with some gray in it is echoed over these windows and doors. So right in here we have a top piece that sits over the door. Sort of, I just put some a little more midnight black on my brush with what was in the brush. We have this window over here has a frame around it like this. Has a deep box shadow on this side. Sits up, has a very light frame over here on the left. It's getting a little more sun. We're going to paint this window in. We're going to put some flowers over it too, so it's not going to be all window. So it's sort of dark down here. So you're seeing a window start to emerge there. Hopefully. That's what's happening. Over here we have some shadows around this door as well. And you see the trouble I have making a nice straight line. I just kind of messed up my line that I made with my palette knife there. Has a slight curve in this door in the top. Using ultraviolet and just sort of going over this gray just so here. Do something like this. It has a interesting little shadow here that's not exactly perfect, but it does show that there's a shadow there. The door itself has some green in it, so I'm just going to use the same brush that's got these colors in it and come up here and start painting this door. It has green, it sort of fades to black at the bottom. Try to make it lighter on the right side so that shadow shows up if I can. Like this. Put a little white in there to lighten it up a little bit. Right in here. Okay, that's a door. And we can always fine-tune this later when we start putting in some finer details, but that's going to do me for now. Over here we have a window. I'm going to go ahead and paint it in with whatever colors in my brush. As long as it's lighter than what's out here, we'll have the distinction in the color so that you'll know there's something going on here, like a window. Doesn't have to be too distinct. Again, our focal point's going to be this fountain over here. Hopefully we don't have trouble with that fountain, but it's going to be interesting to try that with our brushes and see what it looks like. Okay, so down here we're starting to get in some of this. There's a walk path that goes up here. It's it's a slate, sort of a concrete or tile type of walk that fits in this area. And I'm just going to kind of clean out my brush here, painting around these flowers. It's sort of a grayish with a little green in it, a little bit of violet in it. Want it to be kind of darker back here at the back if I can, because it's getting more shadow back here, and that line is going to help define that difference in the building, where the building hits the ground and where these tiles or concrete slates, whatever they are, that fit on this down here. All right, so we're moving right along here with this building. So far we've only had to paint the building. No flowers. Haven't even started the fountain yet. But I think it's starting to look pretty good. Okay, flowers here, flower pots over there. This is more of this gray color. A little too dark, I'd say. I just didn't even put any white in it. A little white, a little bit of our violet. Violet's a good shadow color. It really helps tone colors down, and you can do a lot with it. So we've got this sort of this steel walk that sort of blends here together with this, and making it sort of violet, but I've got some greens in it, got some browns in it. All of this area here is going to be this slate color with some shadows over it. So I want to keep this, right now I want to keep it fairly light because I'm going to put some shadows over it that's going to be darker. So keep this lighter, like it might be concrete, poured concrete or concrete slabs of some kind back here. Trying to paint around this fountain. These strokes are going horizontal. Why is that? Well, it's the ground. It's not a roof. So you want these strokes horizontal. We're going to put in some accent lines in here to make it, to put some shadows, and we're going to put some accent lines to make it show that there's some rockiness or some, well, where maybe two pieces of concrete have gone together, or they put some sort of a, maybe struck them with a trowel or something when they poured this concrete, if it's poured concrete. One never knows what it is when you're looking at these kind of things. You just sort of have to guess. But, so this is all just putting this in slower. I'd do it faster if I had my big brush, but I'm just going to stick with this little filbert here, white, ultramarine. Just put it in here. So these colors kind of, the orange and the blues kind of go together, and this is all going to be somewhat shadowed, so I'm just going to put it in here underneath this, underneath here. This is more concrete, so it's really a little concrete walk around this fountain, and it's got a lot of greenery over here on the right side and in front, and there's a lot of greenery growing up around the house, and there's more trees back there. So just fill this thing in very quickly here. Doesn't have to be any specific color, but just make it sort of between a steel gray and this ultraviolet with a lot of white in it. Using midnight black, and we'll get this corner done, and we'll have it ready for next step. Okay, so we covered a lot of canvas there. I picked up some of the greens back here. The green, as the sun shines on the house, if there's greenery around this house or a green door, those things are going to reflect onto this patio area here where this concrete is, and you want to put some of that green, you want to show that green. It would be very much like we're doing a water scape or a seascape where you have water in the painting and you pull down to get the color of the a cliff or a mountain or something into the water from the reflection of the sun. So, okay, that'll do me for now. And it's a little hard to see, hard to tell it from that gray canvas underneath, but it does have paint on it, so it's nicely colored. All right, what are we going to do next? Maybe I will start with some of these. Clean out this brush. We have some of these nice green trees that look like there are some palm trees in here, and there's some other types of trees, probably cedar trees that looks like they have some moss hanging off of them. I may not paint that moss, but I am going to go back and get this, pick myself some nice green colors here. That's probably too green. I'm mixing up combinations of Prussian blue, cad yellow, getting a little bit of my Indian yellow out. I'll just see what colors of green I can get here. Even the other blue will make a different color of green, so I can have 3 or 4 colors of green. If I throw some Van Dyke or sap green in there and then add some of the blues with that, I end up with 6, 7, 8 different colors of green that I can get out of these 3 yellows, cad, yellow ochre, and yellow Indian yellow, and the 2 blues, phthalo blue and Prussian blue. And you can get some very interesting colors, and you can get dark, you can get lighter. You throw a little of this purple in here, you can get some really dark colors. So if you see this whole string here, I've just made a nice little pile of colors that are going to come up here and are going to go all the way up to this corner. I told you we're going to paint over this, some of this sky area up here. So I want to have these come down, leave a few sky holes in there if I can remember to, so that you can actually see these trees are hanging over this cabin, and we'll put a branch or two in there. I'm just sort of hitting this with the tip of the brush and sort of pushing up here and there, make it look like there's some interesting little leaves hanging off, dangling down. And wherever comes off the brush is all I'm leaving there. Just let it come off and let that hang over, and it's going to make a shadow. It's helping. This is really kind of what's helping make this shadow over the roof, is that these trees are hanging up here, and make them come over a little further. Okay, something like that. And the more overlap you get, the more interesting it makes these things look. Still left some sky holes in there so you can see that there is a place for the sky to poke through. I don't want this to be a rectangle or anything like that. I want it to have some, again, an interesting shape. Maybe some of this is moss. There might be some mossy stuff hanging down. I don't know. We're going to have another set of green coming up from here. It's going to have more of a gray color. Maybe some flowers we'll put in it here. Sort of overlaps some of this and even comes out into this area here with some green. Blue in there and see what that does. To kind of experiment with some of these colors, but this is going to help us define this viney thing that's growing up on the side of the building, and it has some grays in it and darker colors. There's some green, a mixture of greens and colors in this. When we come back and we'll tap on some nice flowers on top of this, and will really look nice when we're done, I hope. That's my plan anyway. This sort of grows over this way a little bit. All right, something like that. It comes down even here further, a little darker. I'm just trying to fill in some of these areas now where we have open canvas, where I left it open specifically for this purpose. This gets a little greener. Some of this down here on top is bright yellow again because it's in the sun. So I need to pick up some more of my, looks like my white's starting to run off the canvas on the palette on me now. It's a little too bright, but it's going to remind me that I want that to be lighter on top. And I can tone it down later. Get some greens and come in here. This is sort of like a hedge type of bush here. And sometimes hedges are trimmed off very, very nicely and neat and square, but in the painting that doesn't always translate what you're doing there, so we'll probably not leave it all nice and neat and square like it might be in real life. We will make what? An abstract shape. That's what we'll do. This gets darker and bluer down here as it touches the ground because it's more out of the light down here. So I'll be putting in some dabs of dark color around these. Another set of flowers down here. So we'll have some nice contrast with the darker colors behind some lighter colors in these flower pots. Oh, my trusty filbert brush is doing all this work for me here. So I went from top up here to all the way down, so we've really painted in a lot of this. And I'll come back and fine-tune some of this if I can remember. Sometimes I forget. And since I'm not in class, I don't have students here to remind me to do something. Okay, so we're getting some greenery on the left side of this building, and hopefully it's going to show up very nicely. I put some flowers around it. This is a little bit too bright right now. Okay. Try to get some mixtures of light and dark, dark and light. Warm and cool, cool and warm. Change everything you can think of. Because it's that contrasting colors, and it's that dark to light that makes things look like they're three-dimensional. It makes them look like they're some organic object, like a plant. But we still do variegated washes in buildings, even though they're a solid object. It's all about making an artistic look out of this thing. Okay, get my little script liner here, get some oil on it, and I want to put in some dark branches up here at the top to kind of connect these trees. So I'm getting this runny thinner and oil. I actually put it in some linseed oil I have on my paper plate. And up here I'm going to throw in some few branches. Look like there's something growing out of this tree. Got something holding all this together here, that it's not just kind of hanging out in space. So this thin paint, if you make a thin paint, like the texture or the viscosity of ink, these things will stick on top and give you some things that look like branches up there. Okay, and we probably have some branches sitting in here that I could throw in maybe, because these are viney. And if I make these vertical, you'll know that's a vine that's kind of coming up here like that, as opposed to coming from somewhere else, which is the effect I'm going to get here. Okay. All right, let me see. That's going to do that, I think. I'm not going to mess around much more with that right now. Only thing I might do is touch just a little paint on top of it to make sure it doesn't look like I just stuck those branches on there, which is what I just did. So I got to fool you again by just kind of doing something with the greens here. If I put a little greenery over that, it will kind of tie it together. Don't want to lose all my sky back there, but sometimes that happens. Okay, it looks like it's more embedded now. Embedded now as part of the painting instead of sticking on top. All right, that's pretty well done. I'm going to stop on this till I put some other flowers on it. This is darken this down over this way a little bit. It's still too light on this left side here. I've got to get this darker in here. There's a lot of shadow back in here. With some highlights of the bush that's here, but it's primarily dark. And I'm just putting in little bush-like things with this brush. All right. I know when to stop on this stuff. It gets driving me crazy. Okay, that's good for that. All right, there's some other greens over here. While I've got this greens going, maybe I'll just keep working on it. I better fix my white. My white's slipping down into my violet, and I don't want that to happen. I have more trouble with this palette today than I've had for a long time. I've never had this much runniness and paint's running down to the bottom. But that's the challenge of a vertical palette. And well, you can only try to do this with oil paints. You can't do it with watercolors for sure. Acrylics might work, but I haven't really done any acrylics for you. On this side we've got more green stuff growing around this window, kind of overlapping the window and wrapping on the top here. Some dark, some lights. I get enough paint that I can let the canvas pull it off. You get some nice effects, but it's kind of not really sure what you're going to get sometimes, but that's the challenge of it. So I'll just make some nice little things that sort of hang down or hang out here. Kind of like I did on this top up here. It's the same type of viney material that looks like it's growing around this window and sort of connecting and leaving little things in front of the window. Probably have to trim these off so they can see out their window periodically. Okay, we've got a few more lighter ones with a little bit lighter yellow and brighter color over here on the right of that. Over in this area here, they start brightening up a little bit. Brighter on top, and they start changing colors as they go down, getting darker, getting more blue or black or something down here as they get toward the ground. So you see the contrast change. I've got the darker parts at the bottom and pushing up with the brush, pushing out with the brush. These are bushes that are growing in sort of a flower bed of some sort around this building, and sort of wrap all the way out here, and actually even wrap around a little bit in there, what you see around this waterfall out here. They're not in front of it, they're behind the not the waterfall, but this fountain. So they're back there, and I'll be putting some more stuff behind this fountain as well. But these are bushes that are in a little garden bed or something that's underneath this window. And I'm just pushing in, pulling up, pushing in, pulling up, leaving an interesting bottom. I don't want it to be square or rectangular because these things are sort of overgrowing. All right, and we'll come back and put some flowers on top of that, some flowers over here, and a few flowers up there. Won't put flowers in the trees. I've got another whole area over here by this building that's got a lot of green in it, and so I'm going to use my green combinations again, yellows, saps, blues, and see if I can get another set of colors back here behind this building. And they sort of go up and wrap around. A little bit darker than what's behind them because they're closer to us, right? So you have to make sure you make them more distinct, make them darker, and try to get a sharp edge here. Old filbert doesn't give the sharpest edge in the let me come back with my other brush. May have to do that just to get this painted in right. So I'll paint over this way, and these will be sort of connected here. change the color, don't keep the same blues, don't keep the same yellows. There's a lot of detail we can put into this fountain if we want to. I may not make it real complicated because I don't want this to be a 4-hour painting. Try to do these paintings in an hour to an hour and a half, which means in my 4-hour painting class we can usually get them all done in about 4 hours when I have a classroom of 16 people or thereabouts, or somewhere between 12 and 16 depending how many show up. So you see I got different colors here, darks, lighter colors. Still painting around this fountain. Haven't painted the fountain yet, but you can see that fountain emerging as I paint around it. Over here we got some more lighter flowers. We got some lavender, violet things showing up over here. Some of this is blurry and fuzzy back here because it's partially in the distance. We got a couple of interesting palm trees that sort of stick up back here. So I've just got a mixture of colors I'm putting back here, and I'm actually going to put in some, I need to put in a little more of this ground back here, this walkway. That kind of goes back that way. So you can see some distance in there, different colors. Still using a filbert for a lot of this stuff, for all of this stuff so far. We've got some nice pink flowers that float around this thing back here that I'm going to try to put in and blend it into this walkway back here. I'm going to mix some more walkway, go back here and blend in with this. As it comes out, I'm going to light it up as it comes forward to get that kind of matching this steel color over here, the steel gray, violet. I want it to show some more walkway back here. So you got trees kind of running into the back there. Hopefully I'll carry this color over. When you paint around something, you want to try to have the same color on both sides of it if you can. Otherwise it's not going to look right. With the same value, same color on both sides of this post that sticks up in this water fountain. So I'll just blend it and sort of change the color over here as I go across. Putting in some more colors. We can put a couple layers of this out here because there's not much on this canvas out here. So I'm changing the color a little bit. I'll actually have some. So it sort of blends it all together. It looks like there's a walk running behind there. So you're starting to see now that little fountain emerged there, and I haven't even. Oh no. Okay, we are back. I don't know how much of this will have to be edited out, or we'll change the editing. Usually I don't cut out any of the video, but my one computer disk filled up while I was taping and didn't know it. I turned around and it said my video capture had stopped and I ran out of disk space. So I had to go out and delete a bunch of old stuff and restart my main camera video. The main camera is the one that focuses on the painting here. I do have a backup camera that focuses on from over here, so it's a little bit different view, so I may be able to use that and won't miss any of that, but I won't know until I get into the editing process. So let's go on. I was saying that we have painted around this fountain here, and I've got some trees and things in the background. I've just put some vertical marks there to indicate them. Got some dark around it. I've actually outlined the fountain even though we haven't painted the fountain yet. So we're getting ready to do that now. And I do have some colors that are look like they're alizarin crimson-like flowers that sort of stick up over here. Have some white in them. We get some white on this thing. And I'm going to get a couple, 3 shades of this and see if I can tap those in now. They just sort of, it's too much white. Where's the alizarin? Put them on top here in this area. Have a little more blue in some of them, so I'm going to touch a little bit of Prussian blue. But boy, Prussian blue is potent. It really takes down the color very quickly. So these are just some flowers that are sort of in the background, but they show up around this fountain. So I'm going to try to stick them in now. Get some dark underneath them. 2, 3 values. And hopefully we'll get this out of the way. See, I'm picking up some of that green that's on the canvas now, so clean the brush. And don't have to wash it out all the time, but you definitely have to wipe it out with a paper towel, or you end up with more green on your brush and wrong colors going on the canvas. So see if we got that now. Here was some. Okay, now that's looking better. There are some of these little, they may have a little magenta in them. I'll try a little of that magenta, see if I can brighten it up. Magenta, and sort of outlines this thing over here. Nothing coming off the brush. I get more paint on the brush when that happens, so when I touch it, things start coming off. Yeah. So we're starting to brighten up this area a little bit with some of these brighter colors. And over here there's a few, so I'll pop in some colors over here. So it's just a nice little red type bush that sits out there that is behind, with some flowers in it, that sits behind this fountain. So I want to make sure that it goes around the fountain and you can see it. Okay, so another way of outlining that fountain, and we got those flowers in place. All right, this little pink actually carried over. There was some stuff over here that was sort of pinkish like, so I might as well stick those in right now. Put a little more white in them, lighten them up. Just putting white right over the top. These aren't too well defined because they're at the edge of the canvas. You don't want to have anything that's super well defined around the edge of the canvas. You want to blur it out, because when the eye looks at the focal point, if this is the focal point, when you look at that, you don't see this in sharp relief over here. You don't see the sharp edges. It looks blurry, so you want to paint it that way. That's the difference between what the eye will see if you're painting out in the open and what the camera will take. When the camera takes this picture, every edge will be sharp, 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 sharp. But that's not the way the eye sees. So you want to make a pleasing artistic painting. You want to make sure that the focal point is as sharp as you can get it, with bold colors and sharp edges. But the outlying perimeter, typically the perimeter all the way around the painting, doesn't have to be very sharp. It can be sort of blurred edges. And that's a secret that many painting instructors don't tell you. I don't know why, but most painting instructors want to keep something in their bag of tricks that they don't tell their students. I'm not quite like that. If I've learned it, if I find out about it, I want to tell you as soon as I can. Okay, let's see now if we can get some, take some of this lavender. I'm going to get a color that I hope looks like this fountain. It's sort of a lavender and white mixed with some of this stucco color. I'm going to see if I can just start putting some of that in right up here. This thing on top is not well defined. I'm not sure what it is. It might be a little statue. It might be something that we can't really see that well. So I'm not going to try to paint it all that well. I'm going to just try to leave it impressionistic and let the viewer figure out what the heck it is. If I were doing a photorealistic painting, I'd want to try to paint that thing in, but that's not what this is. We don't try to paint photos, we try to paint something artistic. If you want to paint a photo, you might as well take a photo and save your paint time. That's my opinion. But I don't think we need to spend a lot of time trying to duplicate photos. Photos can be somewhat your worst enemy because they do deceive the eye significantly. They're good to get reference shapes, to get reference values, but they're not that great for absolute copying. If you wanted to copy, they're not that great for that because they deceive you with their sharpness everywhere. So you have to factor that in when you paint from a photograph. Make sure you don't let that sharp edges of the photograph fool you. The other thing the photograph will fool you is in the blacks and the darks. When photographs, because they're a pixel-oriented device, and basically the technical term that's used for a photographic device is I think it still is, it may be changed something on some of the newer cameras, but in the video days when digital cameras first came out, they were called charge-coupled devices. It's an electronic term that takes light and turns it into electronic impulses in a pixel format. So whether you're taking a one snapshot frame on your digital camera or you're taking video frames on your video camera, the only difference is a video camera typically takes 24 frames a second. So you have what's called JPEG, which would be the one photograph of one picture that you would take with a digital camera. But if you took a 1 second video of that same image, you wouldn't have one JPEG for video, you'd have 24 JPEGs. So the video actually captures that many more images. That's why the videos are so huge. That's why my camera just ran out of space, or my disk drive just ran out of space back there, because I had too many other videos sitting on that disk, and when it filled up, the captured program said, "That's enough, I can't take any more." Stop the program. So that's what happened to me, and that's why I had to make this adjustment. Now, what I'm doing here is I'm sort of painting around this fountain. It's got some stucco in it. It sort of has a pink cast to it in some respects, so I'm sort of painting that. But it's just outlining three little ovals, and the interesting part about this painting is that we're actually using perspective here, and the way this picture was taken, the viewer was standing close by with his eye level about right here, about where you would be maybe in the door. So standing back here, this oval has to be flat because you're not looking down into it, you're looking at it horizontally. This one you're seeing under it slightly, this one you're seeing over it slightly, and this one you're seeing over this oval the big time because you're way above it. So that's why these three, this is a good test in perspective, because you have to think about the object in relation to where the painter's eye is or where the viewer's eye is. And if you aren't careful, you end up with things that don't look right. A lot of people have trouble with perspective because they don't follow those guidelines of where is the viewer's eye. And you have to observe that, or you end up making things look odd. People say there's something wrong with that. I don't know what it is, but usually has something to do with the way you have painted the perspective in the painting. And you don't have the right ovals. In this case, if I made this oval here as narrow as the one above it, you wouldn't know that where my eye was. This particular one right here tells you my eye is about there, and which is about right. If I were standing on this walkway here, standing back, my eye would probably be about level with the mid part of that door. So you think about that as being the horizon line, or where my eye line is. Anything below it, I'm looking down into. Anything above it, I'm looking under. So you need to paint your buildings, you need to paint these objects with that in mind. And if you do, you'll have a successful painting. Let's see, I want to get some black in there, some gray. There's actually some shadows here that I want to paint. So I'm using my black, using my midnight black. And this sort of runs into the water here. There's water ripples and stuff that's going on here. So this starts picking up white, fluffy stuff here where the water is running down. This should have just a little blue in it from the sky. Not much. Enough to let people know it's not a concrete bottom you're looking at, but it's the water that's in this fountain base. I think I have a flat, sort of a flat top here that's a little bit brown and has some of this yellow in it, I think. Right here, this sort of another ledge like to sit on here. It's a little wider. So make this come over like that. And it's starting to take some kind of shape. Again, these are a lot of blurred edges here if I were to get my other brush out, which I'm hesitant to do simply because I don't want the students in my class to have to worry about another brush. So we'll make this, why am I doing this right here? This is shadow. Sun's coming from over here. There's a lip here, and this is in shadow. So I'm going to radiate it down. I'm going to make it dark like this here to the bottom. So it helps define these edges a little bit. Tells the viewer that is a cylinder of sorts. There are places under here that are darker because there's a shadow under this brim. Up here, the shadows really appear almost at the bottom of this. Here and there's a little shadow coming down. Pull this down, mostly on the left side because the sun would be hitting a little bit on the right. Here we'll darken this side over here. I'm just touching the brush in midnight black and just kind of going over what's there, and it gives me a nice little shadow. This side of the post will have a shadow. You see it's starting to look three-dimensional. The three-dimensional look comes because I'm putting shadows under it. I'm putting shadows to the left of it. You can make things look three-dimensional if you put the shadows in the right place, but you can't mix them up. If you do, you'll confuse the viewer, and that's not a happy situation. People will take one look at your painting and move down the gallery to the next guy's painting because they'll say, this guy doesn't know what he's doing. This guy doesn't know how to paint perspective. Okay, I'm going to just a little more time, a few more touches here of some highlights to show some sun floating on the right. If I'm going to have any highlights at all, I want to have them on the right side of these posts. Back here, a little bit up here. Not too much, just, again, these lines, these horizontal lines or curved lines I'm striking help tell the viewer that that's a rounded surface. Here, this is a rounded surface. It's got the highlights to prove it. And the bottom of this has some few highlights here, down this side, over there. I didn't put a, let's see, make sure this is connected and running together. I got some. The other thing I need to think about is that there is, because this is sort of a stucco-like structure that's kind of pinkish, I'm going to put some of that color in this water here, because there's actually, this is casting a small shadow on the water in here, like this. So even though the water is white, you have to put some things that look like shadow here, or it doesn't connect with the viewer either. Fooling the eye for the beholder, fooling the eye for the viewer. You have to do it. If you don't, you'll end up with paintings that don't look right. I'm going to put a little more white in here in some spots, because this is rough texture. It's got bubbles, and because the water's falling down, I'm going to take a few streaks and make some white things falling down here. But that's pretty much what I want to do with this. I could go in there and fuss around with this for another half a day if I wanted to, but I don't really want to spend a lot of time on it. I want to hit it with the dark colors. This helps, this little shadow here helps define that curvature. Shadows on the left help define the curvature of this cylinder in the middle. And these actually have some other textures on them. They're not just plain straight vertical posts. They actually have some little things in here that kind of bubble out. It's really hard to paint with this particular brush, but we can maybe indicate some shadow-like pieces in here that indicate there's some rings on it. Maybe something like this here. Again, you have to observe the perspective and observe the right curvature, because if you don't, you'll be telling the viewer you don't understand perspective again. Up here, that needs to be either flat or curved down. As you see them here, they need to be level. And as you see them from the top, they need to curve like that. So any shadow you put under anything needs to reflect where the viewer's eye is. If they don't, it shows in your painting. Okay, stop. Over here, I'm going to put a few light places in, maybe even pull in some of this red from over here. Okay. We're going to have some more flowers over here. This is all going to be greenery, a mixture of flowers, so I'll pick that up. Those could be reflections. Basically, all we got left to do is put in some flowers, flower pots here, some flowers and greenery here, and then do some final touch-up, and we'll be done with this painting. I'm not sure how long we've gone now. We've gone another 20 minutes since I restarted my camera capture, so I won't know how long this painting is until we actually put the thing together on the editing deck. Okay, over here I'm going to put in some more bright greens, things that are kind of connecting these flowers over here. Dark greens, some mid-tones and darks under them. This will define the flower beds and things over here. And mix up the colors. Put in some, if you put them in like this, they look like they're a series of things that are planted. I'm just taking the brush and rubbing it and rolling it. I'm going to come back and put some magenta flowers on top, so I'm just putting the green base under it right now. And trying to mix it up, get some changes of color. Bright, they got some bright colors in here. So every time I do a dark color, followed by a light color, followed by a dark color, what am I doing? Students, you know what I'm doing. I'm making depth Every change of color gives you a indication of depth in the painting. This needs to get really darker over here. Let's put in some dark stuff right in here. So the dark that is outlined by light, or light that's outlined by dark, helps make this all appear very, like there's a whole series of bushes or plantings of flowers that sort of run along beside this backside of this fountain. So that's the effect we're trying to get, and hopefully that's coming through to you and will come through to the viewer when they see this painting. Okay, I'm going to leave a few holes in here because I'm going to come back and put some nice pink flowers in there. Get my darks. Some darks under. So that's mixing up darks and lights, making them stick out like there's some little branches that kind of cover this walkway. There's actually more walkway down here that I didn't paint, which I may want to go back and put in. Here we go. Okay, now I'm going to fill that other gray areas in there with some of my magenta and alizarin and some oranges. Okay, so that looks like a bank of planted things on the right side, which is what I want it to look like. We have a few down here in front. I'm going to go ahead and put the green in for those right now. Similar green, it's the same type of bushes that just sort of sit down here and hang over the walkway. I'll put the flowers in and make it dark at the bottom. Otherwise it's not going to be, the viewer's going to know you didn't try to get three-dimensional perspective out of this thing. Darker at the bottom, sort of mid-value in the center, and maybe some little highlights up here on top. So you have three values: dark, medium, and light. And I'm not really painting specific branches or anything like that. I'm just painting just dabs of paint in here to sort of make this look interesting. As the sun is hitting on some of these things. I'm going to put some flowers there. Okay, where else have I got greenery? I got some greenery in here around these pots, flower pots. I got to put the bottom of the flower pots in. And there's some, whoops, I made a mistake there. On these pots, the light shade goes on the right. Did you catch that? Why does the light shade go on the right? Because the sun's coming from over here. Now these, I got it kind of on the top, some on the left, but the sun can hit these as well as, because they stick up, so the sun could still hit this. But over here, definitely, in this flower pot on the left, this has to be darker over here on the left. So I'm going to darken it up so you see the three. If I can get three values in there, it's not a very big space. If I want it to be dark here, I'm going to put the rest in with flowers. Over here, I'm going to put some shadow here because pots are making a little shadow here. Lavender or ultraviolet. Put this in, I'm going to put some shadows in here. These things are casting a little shadow to the left. I got to put some orange in there for the flower pot. But these are something like that. I'm outlining the flower pots. I haven't painted flower pots yet, but you can kind of see the flower pots. Over here, we're going to have some more darks in here because this is really getting a shadow from this fountain. See the darks that I put here. The darks I put here outline that fountain, so you can see the edge of it, but you can also see the shadows poking out. So this has a sort of a triangular shadow. Something like this. But it's got a lot of other branches, other things over here that are casting shadows as well. So we want to sort of hit those if we can. The tree, actually there's a pine tree back, or not a pine tree, but a palm tree back here. So getting some cool colors here. Trying to paint around some of this. It's fairly dark in here, but I'm going to leave a few lights because I want to have some of the over here. It starts to connect and make the same colors over here. That's a start. Oh, I could fine tune that, but you can start now seeing, because I put that shadow, you can definitely see the edge of that fountain, and you can see the shadows that it's casting, as well as shadows that these other bushes are casting. Be careful to not get too much of that in here, too much of the green is what I want to say. I'm going to lighten this up with some white because I want it to look like that's part of this walkway that's over to the left. Which it is. This is all part of the same walkway. Okay. Filbert brush, don't fail me now. This has been a good brush for this painting. Might have gotten it done faster if I'd used a bigger brush, but I kind of like the way this filbert leaves brush strokes on the canvas. All right, put in some of these flowers, and then we'll flowers. I'm going to have this magenta color in them, a little bit of red in them, and alizarin. So if I take my three reds, now you see the combination of colors I have in my three reds. Magenta, alizarin is a dark purpley red, and this cad red or bright red is it's sort of an orange red, red with orange in it. So I'm going to use combinations of these on these flowers over here. Use the orange red, come back and get a little magenta and stick a little magenta in there in some spots. Alizarin in a few places. White. Tap off some white in there. The white will help tie it together. I'm just tapping, letting it come off the brush what will come off. Over here we got some nice little flowers. These aren't going to have to be real distinct either, but that's kind of what you have to do for something like this. Make them, see the greenery at the bottom? Over here on the right side we've got a lot of these little things that are sticking up in all kinds of different places. There's some over here like this, sticking in there like that, coming out, popping out. Change the color, get some alizarin darker. I'm just dabbing with this filbert, and whatever comes off the brush comes off the brush. How about some of this cad red? How about some white? Lighten it up. So these little things floating around everywhere over here. Problem is you pick up that green underneath, so you got to go back, wipe your brush on the paper towel. Keep changing it up, adding white to lighten it up. These don't have to be very distinct at all over here. Anything within 1 to 2 inches of the border of the painting. They need to be really abstract. You just don't want to get the eye caught looking around over here. They'll go right off the painting somewhere else. So don't make those very distinct. Most of the flowers won't be distinct anyway. I'm going to sort of just keep them nondescript. Throw a few blues in here, lavenders or something to add some other colors, contrasts. I don't know what kind of flowers these are. I don't know what they are at all, but I just know that colorful, and they added a lot of interest to this painting. I'm going to put a few over here even because it didn't really show up in the original photo, but I think we need this color echoed. We need to have this color echoed over here. It's in the flower pots, but I think I want some in the greenery as well. That's just my own taste. You may not like that. If you don't like it, you don't have to put it in because it's your painting. It's not my painting. But something like that. Put a little more green at the bottom here to darken it up, make it look like they're really connected here. All right, where else can I put some of this? I think I'm going to put, this is awfully boring green over there, so let's put a few red flowers, orange flowers or something over there. Maybe I'll get a little orange, a little yellow in it. I said I was going to do this, so I better. You might remember I said it. I may not remember I said it. So, put a few around this up here. These don't have to be just real distinct either. Maybe I was going to put a few over here even. So what do we can put in to kind of brighten up the painting, make it look nice. Now you don't want them to look like they're just stuck on. See, right now this looks like there's a hard edge there. It looks like they're really stuck on top. So you just sort of blend that out with the brush. Come up and pull the brush up into it, and you sort of connect them all together. Over here, something similar. Don't leave them. They can have a hard edge if they're actually sticking up above what's beneath them. And the last place that I think we had some of these flowers that had magenta and white and orange in them is right in here. These might sort of become part of the highlight that draws the eye in. A little bit of magenta, a little bit of violet in here to darken up the bottoms. We can have a couple different kinds of flowers in here. I don't even know what they are. I'm not trying to paint a specific flower. I'm impressionistically laying down some brush strokes that give the impression of flowers, but are not necessarily any particular flower. And a few little dark strokes here, maybe like some stems floating down in there. Over here we might have some, there was some I left area over here for flowers. I see the gray canvas sticking up. Mm-hmm. Yes. All right. Okay. Orange flower pots. Mixing up cad red and some yellow ochre to get this orange color. Maybe I'll put a little alizarin in there to redden it up a little bit. Okay. See how that works. A few strokes here and we'll have flower pots made. Just very simple. Should look like flower pots to you, hopefully. What do I got to do? Got to make them darker on the left. I'll put a little brown on here. Pull down some some brown left side. How about the right? Well, maybe I need a little highlight on the right side. Lighten it up. We got to be dark or lighter than what's there. Add a little white to something here that's got brown in it, or those vertical strokes, just a couple. tell you, these are little flower pots sitting in there. We got some, okay, excuse me. I think I want something darker in here even. This is not quite dark enough. Put that black in there, and the black blends so well with everything else. It's kind of doesn't stand out quite as much as I would like. Okay, a few shadows here. A couple of other green areas, these little palm trees. I'm going to try to put them in. I don't know how we're doing on time. I'm probably running way over, but I'd like to get some palm trees in over here. Cover up some of this. I'm going to take some of this sort of an olive green. A good olive green can be made by using midnight black and yellow ochre. And the yellow and that black sort of give you a nice green. If it's not quite light enough, you can lighten it up with white. Let's see, try this other yellow. And in here I've just got some fronds that I want to stick up and out. I don't know how well it's going to work with this brush. So I'm just pulling out away from the center. Darker in some areas. I want it to be darker sort of in the middle. If I can get it darker by using Prussian blue maybe. Yeah, there we go. Pull the center out, leave some points on the ends. There's a couple of palms, oh, there's actually several over here that sort of stick out. Like this. There's another one in the middle. So it sticks out like this. So it gives you the impression there's some palm trees sitting in there. If you put a dark center in them, you'll tell the viewer that you got something going on there. Maybe there's even a couple that stick down this way. It's getting hard when you get over the color that's there. It's you got to get very dark. Very dark, darker than that. These would be in shadow down here probably because other trees may be blocking them. And you can always come back and put some yellows in there to help brighten them up, show some of the highlights, like this. Okay, the thing that's missing is some trunks. So let's put some trunks in there. I'm going to get my little script liner out. Excuse me. Get some this brown here, maybe some gray, and see if I can put in a few things that look like trunks here. Something like that. Take them right off the canvas if I have to. Okay. I had a thought that if some of the students had too much trouble with the fountain, that we would just replace it with a couple of big pine tree or palm trees. Place a few of the palm trees on the right side over there. Instead of this, we might be able to put a couple of big palm trees there, and that might be enough for some folks if they don't want to try that fountain. But the way we painted that fountain was fairly simple. I tried to keep it as simple as possible for everybody. Putting in some little graffiti marks back here. I want to put in a thing in the window. It looks like we got some sort of a frame in this window back here. I'm using sort of a light brownish gray here in this with this script liner. This has a little more shadow here. There's probably a doorknob of some sort here. Maybe some boards that stick up in this thing like that. Maybe a few things over here. Maybe a stroke or two on. I don't want to mess this up, but I do want it to help define this a little better here. There's a sort of define these plane changes a little better if we can. Okay, I'll be messing it up if I keep doing this too much. Gotta know when to stop. I'm not particularly happy with the shadows that I've got here in the foreground. I think they're still too skimpy. So I may take a few more minutes on that, and then we'll call this complete. Really need some of this gray, my blacks. And I want these things to sort of go like this. I want to kind of indicate we got some trees and other things on the right side. Darker down here, maybe. We did have some marks in here that sort of showed the marks in the concrete. They sort of give you this idea that this is a walkway of sorts. I don't know what that's doing to the painting, but it gives us needs to be smoother, and then they're sort of getting some stuff from the trees over there on the right side. It's a little better. I may mess with this a little bit and take a final photograph and stick it on at the end, but I think I've done enough videotaping for a while, and so hopefully this will help us define that a little better. Maybe touch along the bottom here so we don't have too scraggly an edge. Okay, I think I'm going to stop on this now. Probably have some darker over here. This sort of needs to have some, yeah, it's too light for being in the shadow back here. These old stucco buildings pick up all kinds of colors from mold, from reflection, from what's around them. Okay, I think that's gonna maybe do it for this painting today. And I know I've put on 45 minutes since I reset my camera, so hopefully this won't have to be a super long painting, but on video. I will see how the editing process goes and get this thing loaded out as soon as I can. Okay, let's stop. Tell me when to stop. I have to have somebody tell me to stop. Just sort of rounded here. Let's make it a little rounded. Okay. Got enough texture. I'm going to put a few bumps in here to make it look like the water is rippling. Oh, the thing I forgot. Oh, don't let me forget the waterfall. The water coming over the edges. I got to put that in. Maybe I'll mess this painting up now. Who knows? This is a test. White, titanium white. Maybe I'll get a little liquid white in there just so that I make sure that it flows over the paint that's on there. But you want to have some little dribbly things that come down like this to show water falling out of the upper levels. Like that. Sort of like a little waterfall, just touch it. I know I'm picking up the paint that's underneath, so I can't get a lot on my brush. I have to stop and wash it. We have a little pool of water down here, and this water is, get it on the end of the brush and make little streams coming down this way. Maybe even some comes over this edge. It falls down, clean the brush, get more paint. Vertical streaks, vertical streaks. If they're not vertical, it's not going to look right. Down here they're splashing when they hit. Have a few dark spots in here where there's some shadows when it's hitting. Okay, let's stop. I think that's about all I want to do to that. If I do too much more, I'm going to do too much more and I will ruin it. You don't want to go so far that you ruin it. And I want to get just something like this. All right. So we got flowers in the background. We got nice little, these flowers over here could have a little bit of, whoa, too much. Be careful. Be careful, you'll run it. Okay, that's a little better. I'll make them point toward that fountain, which is what you want to do with your brush strokes. If you can, make them point toward the center of interest. All those little pointed things are telling you to look over here, look over here. These tell you to look up here. Okay. Stop. Stop. Okay, that's it for today. I'm glad you stayed with me, and I hope you give this painting a try. And until I see you the next time, I hope you keep painting and having fun. So until I see you again, this is Larry Hamilton signing off for now, and I'll see you next painting. Thanks.